So how neurons communicate with each other and with other cells? So they do it through gaps, and the gaps are called synapses. The neuron communication can happen through electrical communication or electrical synapse or chemical synapse. The electrical one lets electric current move from one neuron to another one, and few electric synapses happen in the vertebrates, but many in invertebrates. The chemical synapse releases neurotransmitters, and it's better because the synapse can alter response based on the type and the amount of the neurotransmitters. So let's see how the synapse look like. It contains the axon terminal of a presynaptic cell, the synaptic gap, as well as the postsynaptic cell. Here comes the depolarization, the electric impulse along the axon generated from the axon hillock close to the cell body. And here is the postsynaptic cell. The postsynaptic cell can be another neuron, or a muscle cell, or a gland that will produce a hormone or another protein. Inside of the axon terminal, I wanted to draw the synapse, but I just stopped doing it. But anyway, so these vesicles are the synaptic vesicles that they contain neurotransmitters. There are more than one type of neurotransmitter, and we will discuss that later along in this video. These on the membrane we have voltage-gated calcium channels. As the depolarization comes, well, it will open the gated calcium channels. So calcium goes into the axon terminal and make the vesicles fuse with the membrane, and exocytosis will happen, and the neurotransmitters get into the synaptic gap, and they are going to bind into receptors. They act as ligands. The ligand will bind into gated ion channels. The ion channels will open, and another postsynaptic potential will happen. This is scenario 1 that can happen. The magnitude of the response depending on the number of neurotransmitter molecules that bind it to receptors. So the receptors, depending on what channels they open, they can be excitatory, postsynaptic, they can produce excitatory postsynaptic potential, EPSP, and this happens when sodium and potassium channels open. And they can also cause inhibitory postsynaptic potential on the postsynaptic cell when only potassium or chlorine channels open. Both of them will cause hyperpolarization, so the membrane potential will get even lower. Neurotransmitter receptors. There are two types of neurotransmitter receptors. One of them that deals with the ion channels, the ionotropic, the potassium, sodium, and chlorine channels. And also it can be metabotropic receptor, and they are usually involve some transduction inside of the cell, in the postsynaptic cell, involves secondary messenger like in form of CAMP or CAMP and phosphorylation of specific channel proteins in order to open or close that channel. And here we have the neurotransmitters, the different type of neurotransmitters. There are 5 groups that we can group them. One of them is the acetylcholine, ACH, that's the shorthand for that. They can act on inotropic receptors like a neuromuscular junction when the neuron forms a synapse with a muscle. It can cause excitatory postsynaptic potential, and acetylcholinesterase breaks down the acetylcholine in the synaptic gap. It can be metabotropic receptor that can bind the ligand in the heart and the central nervous system. G protein CAMP decreases, opens potassium channels, so reduces the heart rate. The other group is the amino acids. The 3 amino acids that act as neurotransmitters are the glutamate, the GABA. This is gamma amino butyric acid. You don't have to know just only the GABA, and glycine. The first one is excitatory neurotransmitter and deals with the long-term memory. The GABA and glycine is inhibitory. They are inhibitory neurotransmitters. The third group is the biogenic amines. They are synthesized amines from amino acids. One of them is the norepinephrine that comes from the tyrosine amino acid. The second one is dopamine that comes also from tyrosine. And the third one is serotonin that comes from tryptophan. The first one is excitatory, and the last 2 deals with sleep, mode, attention, and learning. The fourth group are the Neuro Peptides. They are short amino acid, short chains of amino acids. They act through metabotrophic receptors like substance P. It's excitatory and deals with pain perception. And the second one is endorphin that acts like pain reducer, and the opioids mimic their effects like the morphine. The last group are the gases. The nitric oxide and carbon monoxide in a small amount. Nitric oxide causes smooth muscle relaxation, so it's going to lower the blood pressure. Evolution of the nervous system. So, natural selection acts on organisms. Faster the reaction of an organism for a specific stimulus might save its life. So the reaction time got to decrease. It happens if the diameter increases of the axon. Also, if insulation appears on the axon, it proved to be a really good idea for decreasing the reaction time. Here's the axon. The orange ones are the myelin sheath made out of lipids. In the central nervous system, oligodendrocytes are doing the myelin sheath, and the peripheral nervous system, the Schwann cells, are responsible for formation of the myelin sheath. Between the myelin sheath, we have the nodes of Ranvier, where you can find voltage-gated sodium and potassium channels. The action potential happens at those places. Depolarization as well as repolarization happens at the nodes. And the gain, what we get, it's fast impulse propagation. The axons can be thin and they solve space issues like in the brain. Now, because only the depolarization goes from node to node, we call it saltatory conduction of the impulse. And this is really makes it the reaction time very low.